So now it's my huge pleasure to welcome Samantha Morton. Sam, hello. You're very, very welcome here. We're very grateful to you for spending this evening with us. You're no stranger to BAFTA. You've won one for the semi-autobiographical directorial debut that you did, The Unloved. You've been BAFTA nominated for several performances, for Control, for Longford, and then for very recently for I Am Kirsty. And we were very sorry not to be able to talk to you during the kind of nominee process for I Am Kirsty.
Sorry about
I'm so glad that we get to talk to you about it tonight. We've got about a little bit over an hour. We're going to jump around a little bit because we've got a huge back catalogue that we can refer to. You've got something like 30 features, over 20 TV series as an actor, plus several writer credits, plus your award-winning directorial debut. But we've got all that to mine in order to get a little bit of a sense of your relationship to the roles that you choose, to the nature of your different collaborations, and to your techniques as an actor, and you can be as detailed as you want. I'm going to kick off with some questions, but it is absolutely for our audience to ask you questions. Everybody, you should just note that you just click on the Q&A box and you write in your questions, and I'll try and get to them as we go through, but I'll certainly leave a good time at the end to get through to your questions. So let's get to it. Sam, how are you? Where are you? And how's your lockdown been?
I'm in the UK, which is lovely. I got back to the UK in November, having just finished shooting The Walking Dead, the TV series that I am part of, that world. And then kind of Christmas happened, and then, you know, sadly, a global pandemic kind of kicked in. And there was the bit before the pandemic where before lockdown, where we kind of knew it wasn't good. And then we had lockdown. And lockdown for me I was lucky because I have, where I used to live, I had a big garden, and it was in the countryside, and really beautiful, lovely community of people. But ultimately I found it distressing, kind of personally distressing. And you have to be very strong for your children. You have to be strong for everybody, and something kicks in a way whereby I suppose survival, we are strong, but it wasn't easy at all.
And was it until work? Have you been productive during this time?
No, because I don't know how. No, I was a bit, but when you've got small children, young children, and they're not at school, and you're trying to navigate BBC Bite Size, and I can hardly do half the things that my kids do at school. So it was really tricky, actually, and trying to make sure that you're exercising every day and you're out, and we've got animals, and so it wasn't as productive as I think a lot of other people's. I tried to mix it up as much as I could, and being creative with the children was really important to me, and there.
All right, well, we can hear more about what you've got coming up. At the end. The temptation with these things is always to do them kind of chronologically, but actually I'd rather we started at the very end with the kind of the thing that you did most recently, I Am Kirsty, because it's such a great piece, and I really wanted to have a time to talk about it. It was one part of an anthology series created by Dominic Savage, and your part also created by you. Tell us what was there at the beginning. Like, did Kirsty exist? How much of a kind of fleshed out person was she, and how did you work on her?
Well, Dominic was auditioning or meeting actresses in order to make this. He knew that he wanted to make a series of films about women, that women had a huge amount of power in. Like, what do you want to say? And I've been talking about this I've been trying to get a hold of various filmmakers, female filmmakers actually, in order to tell a version of this story. They never got back to me, or they're like, oh, just get in touch with my assistant. And I was like, oh, okay, but I really wanted to talk to you personally about this. And it was just tricky. And I find it really tricky, actually. I was finding it really tricky to get, things are a bit different now, I think, because everyone's had a lot more time with lockdown, and think about a different way of working. But certainly for many years, if you would approach people with a project, it wasn't easy to get things off the ground. So I was a bit fed up with that, really. Like, I'd have these good ideas, and I'd kind of approach people and nothing would really come of it. And I'm like, well, I'm not a producer, actually. I don't know how to produce. And that's never going to happen. And a little bit like thinking back to the Unloved is that for a while there, I was trying to get other people to make that film. Because I just wanted to step back. I wanted to step away from it, have the idea and let someone else direct it, and have fresh eyes on that subject matter. That's what I thought all those years ago. But this was different. This was Dominic sitting with me, taking the time to say, as an actress, what do you want to do? And what do you feel is being underrepresented, or what kind of roles do you think aren't out there for you? And I'm 43, and you literally have this situation where roles just disappear. Like all of a sudden, my 20s, you've got scripts and scripts and scripts. And I was really lucky, and I am really lucky, and I feel privileged about that. But it still is like you just suddenly notice what roles are coming in, and a huge amount of male writers on these projects, and what they're writing about, and what people want. I suppose what people are commissioning and what they're wanting to be told. So this was like what stories people want to tell. And initially I was like, oh, I mean, I am a huge fan of Dominic and Dominic's work, and I really always have been. And he's one of the ones that if I was lucky enough to work with, kind of thing. So I didn't want to be rude to him or say anything inappropriate, but I was kind of like, well, it's weird kind of you making female stories because you're a male, like what, do you know what I mean? But actually it became about equality, and it became about the masculine and the feminine coming together, and this beautiful thing of the facilitation of that. And so we talked for hours and hours about different ideas, and he had ideas and I had ideas, and then eventually we came to this character, Kirsty, who is, in my world, an amalgamation of people I've known incredibly well in my life. It's an incredibly personal, yet again, a personal story. And he took the seeds of truth and made it a story. So I could therefore free the trauma, if you like, and act in it, rather than go, oh, this is. And he was amazing, and he is amazing, and that's where that kind of, I hope that makes sense. That's where
yeah, definitely,
kind of how that happened.
Tell us how the dynamic shifts between you as an actor, him as a director, but something that you've also written or contributed to very heavily.
Well,
how does that change things?
Well, the I Am Kirsty was improvised, fully improvised, from the moment you're on set to the minute the camera's turned off, till Stuart says, right, camera's turned off now. You're always in character. So it isn't like writing dialogue. It's about writing, it's for Dominic wrote the structure, the bones of it. This is what we're going to do. And then you've got the way Dominic directs is really quite magical and quite liberating, because it's about creating a near perfect environment for the performance to be free and safe in. And that's down to the crew, having a very, very small crew, but the right energy, or everybody kind of having this vibe together, I suppose. And that's really hard to achieve. Krish, the producer, would, if you were to speak to him, if anyone knows him, talk to him about what they were trying to just create, this perfect atmosphere in which we could perform. So it didn't feel, it just felt, this word is a bit kind of overused, but it felt very organic, but in a good way. Tiring though, improvising for that, all those hours without a break, it was really tiring.
Did it make it, does it change the way you act because you've written it? I mean, did it feel like a very...
Not at all. No, because I haven't written those moments. Those moments are organic and they're happening there. We have collectively decided we're going to make this story, and we've spent days and days together building that structure back and forth, as I suppose in a writer way, in a writerly way. But when you're there, it's about what feels right. And if the camera's rolling and Dominic will be directing a scene, and it might say, Kirsty goes into the flat, and he might say, okay, let's not go into the flat on this one. I want you to just see what happens if you just sit, or have this affect you more or that affect you more. So it really is about trusting your director. And when you're in those moments, you're not Sam, you're so in your character. And if you do trust your director, you're so in that moment that you're not feeling that you're acting your own stuff. It kind of doesn't feel that way.
There's a really striking thing. I mean, having looked at a lot of your work recently, I've noticed that you play a mother very often, and you did it again here. Can you talk a little bit about the building the relationship with the two girls that played your daughters, and kind of how you kind of what was the process that you used with them to get them to relax with you and to work so brilliantly?
I think that I play a lot of mothers because I'm at that age, and they're the roles that are written for us. Men get to be heroes and victims and all the rest of it. We don't get this as many kind of variation on the role, the role written, if you get what I mean. I don't mind playing mothers because I'm a mother, but that's nature, isn't it? But there are people I've played that haven't been mothers. I think that depending on the script, you have a duty, a responsibility, if you can, to become friendly with whoever you're working with, if that's the vibe that the director wants, or that you would like that. Because some actors just really need their own space, and then they're like, listen, I'll see you there, and we'll just get on with it. I find that really, whether you're a child or a 50-year-old man or an 80-year-old man, I think the stronger the relationship that we all have, that the safer it is on set, safe emotionally, because you're being asked to do things all the time that are, for children, it can be incredibly tiring, and it is often not a very fun place. And children, I've got a funny thing with kids on film sets, because having been a child actor all the way back in Soldier when I was 12 or 13 when I did that, to watching children have to perform some pretty tough stuff in films I've done myself, I think that they need to feel safe with you as a friend, and that involves, hopefully, if the parents are willing, to chat with the parents, spending time with them offset. If obviously now with COVID it's going to be hard, but listening, seeing what they like. And also, I think it's down to the director on how they direct. I think Jim Sheridan was extraordinary in America, because he'd rather just let them be and get the camera rolling, rather than forcing them into certain situations where they've learnt their lines at home with their parents, and so they only know one way to do it. And then you're on set, and it's like, what you're really trying to do is to get to hope that the child is going to listen and respond and still get their lines right. Ultimately, so long as the writer's comfortable, so long as the kids are being in character and it's all happening, we're all good.
You talk there about you starting really young. Did you? And I know obviously you're famously connected with the Central Workshop and that sort of generation that came through there. Can you remember back to the sort of techniques and lessons that you learnt there that you've used throughout, and also maybe that you see in those girls that you worked with on I Am Kirsty? I mean, can you remember specifics?
I think the I Am Kirsty thing is very, very different. If you could separate that for a second, because the workshop thing is a little bit like when I talk to actors that went to either Rose Bruford or Bristol or RADA, everyone has memories and a thing that they have that they bring with them, that they learn, or it's a thing. I think once you're from the workshop, and actually, I'm a lot older than Vicky and those guys and Jack O'Connell. I'm a different generation to those guys. I don't know. I've often said to Ian Smith, who used to run the workshop, and he ran it after a woman called Sue Knott, was that if they could bottle it and sell it, or give it to, I don't know, give it to the world, it'd be an extraordinary thing, even from a situation to do with trauma or healing, kind of workshop vibe, because it really is, for me, growing up and going to workshop was, I mean, heavy on improvisation. I mean, really heavy on improvisation and finding characters, and, you know, kind of the workshop didn't have just like everybody was the same. You'd have a funny one, a funny kid, a loud kid, a very quiet, shy child. You'd have a real mixed match. And people often say it's very similar to Anna Scher's. People that went to Anna Scher's in London and the workshop had a similar thing going on. But Nottingham back then in the 80s and the 70s, you've also got the Nottingham Playhouse, and you've got this kind of radical theatre happening, and you've got radical, you know, certainly for me growing up with, you know, kind of the socialist views that my family held, and very, very political. So actually looking back, a lot of what Ian was doing was quite political, unbeknownst to us, because it was pushing the boundaries of what kids were allowed to do. We had an edit suite down there with cameras. We were able to film each other. And I mean, these are like kind of almost art installations we were doing on a regular basis. He allowed us to write our own plays, direct our own plays, give us the space. And so you've got the under 11s, the 11 to 16s and the over 16s group, and they're all meeting for free all the time. And then he would put on a play, whether it's Our Day Out or, Wind in the Willows or whatever it was. But we did plays and of course Shakespeare, and then it, you know, when I left back years ago, it then went on to greater and greater things in regards to the level of performance and plays that they would put on. But it was just this fearless, and it still is a fearless, kind, loving, safe space for young people to be. It's like a mini drama school without knowing it.
But actually with I Am Kirsty, you left all that behind and did something completely different.
No, but you were talking about the children. Were the children the same? No, you never leave workshop behind, Briony. You never, that's in your DNA. If that's how you've learned, whether it's bad habits or good habits, that's always in you. And it's up to you to, as you change and you get older, to navigate that. But I wouldn't leave who I am behind to be I Am Kirsty, but I'm also, those children aren't acting in the same way as workshop children, because they're not. Yeah. I may have misunderstood your question, Briony. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. Just going back to Kirsty, with a project like that, which is about such a kind of, you know, graphic sort of social issue, it could easily have just, the tone could have been too much. It could have been too brutal, too hard to watch. What kind of discussions did you have about that? About having real impact, but also not having it as something that people couldn't turn on and watch.
I think that's a Dominic question, because he directed it. I think that we didn't have those discussions at all.
Did you not?
No.
And there's never a time when even when you were kind of improvising and, you know, kind of adding the depth to Kirsty, that you wanted to do something that he thought, no, you know what, that's just too much for turn off. It won't work.
No, that's not how I work.
Yeah.
That's a level of, maybe that's for kind of film financiers and producers to think about when they're financing projects. My job is to always be in character. It's not to think about the manipulation of whether what we're doing is appropriate or not. That's a different, if you like, layer to our industry.
But you want people to watch what you do. You want people to, you know, kind of take all the things that you're trying to tell them.
Yeah, but any movie you make or TV series you make, there might be scenes that are on the cutting room floor. And that's happened in all sorts of, you know, and I suppose if you're a writer, that might happen with your editor, or there's some, and that's down for the editor and the director to find out what they feel is the balance of that piece of art. And at the end of the day, if you're always thinking, you have to think about the audience, because that's who you're making it for. But when you're in that moment, you think about the truth of that, I think. And I don't ever come out of that world to think, oh, is this a bit too much? That's up the discretion of the filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
And then and then it's for the audience then to decide if they want to carry on watching or turn off. It's interesting. Somebody said to me something about the Unloved, the film I made, that I think the first how many minutes nothing is said, and there's an ad break because it's Channel 4, and they didn't lose their audience after the ad break. And I felt so proud of that, because it was just very still at the beginning of that film. And I thought, yeah, they want to know what happens to this person. And I think that was the first time I'd ever really put that hat on and thought about that question, because, yeah,
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about getting into a character, you know, kind of how you get into the mindset for filming. I wondered, like probably everybody who's listening to you at the moment, I listened to your fantastic Desert Island Discs.
Oh,
when I say listen to, I mean wept throughout. Just absolutely brilliant. But I wondered, music's clearly hugely important to you. Do you ever use it to get into the skin of a role?
Always. And I suppose before acting, for want of a better word, I use it to get into the skin of Sam, to heal me, to provoke me to get up and out and about and get my shit together, or to dance to feel better. Music is life to me. And when I started getting acting parts that meant I was like in every day on the schedule, it became very apparent to me that I didn't cope very well with noise on set. On busy sets, on telly sets, where back in the day, you know, people are smoking and it's just really everyone's chatting about the weekend, and I'd be like, I've got a really big scene to do in a minute, I've got to go and kill some guy, and you know, it's like Band of Gold days, and that's when I first started having headphones to take me to a place of neutrality. And it wasn't so much about character then. It started off as like taking me out of someone talking about whether or not the roast potatoes were crunchy enough at lunchtime, and me trying to it's not like learning my lines or remembering the lines, but just staying in that moment, because we might have done a scene and then we go off for lunch, I'll break for lunch, and then you're like, we're not going to do my close up now, or we've done the master and we're not going to, okay, all right, stay in it, Sam. Am I going to eat lunch? I don't know. I don't think I'll eat lunch, you know, to stay in the moment. And the music was just for that, just to get me out of it. And then as the years went by, I think the first film I did a playlist for was that I really remember actively going, this is my playlist, was Jesus' Son.
Yeah.
And before then, I'd have a song that would get me into a scene, but I didn't do a playlist for an entire movie. And it was Kathy Burke who inspired me to do that, because she did me a tape after we did Tom Jones, this TV series. And she did me this tape, and I started using that tape for all these different performances. I was like, oh, back in the days of tapes. And so that's when it started, I think. And then that is now it. That once you do that, you can't, becomes a bit of a crutch. And I get a bit superstitious about it now. So.
And you have other things as well. I've seen you talking about how you have a smell for each role.
Oh, yeah, everyone, yeah. And that again goes back to Sam, because that goes back to memories and triggers. So when I was directing The Unloved, I was hiding comfort fabric softener in the mum's house, because my real mum's house was always really clean and nice, and it just kind of triggers me back in a good way to that space. And then it was like, I think it was Tracy again in Band of Gold, when this character started earning a bit more money, I was like, oh, because I didn't like smelling like me at work. I just felt like, oh, I'm being a bit mean. And I was always trying to, because I didn't learn how to act in a traditional way. I was like, anything that reminded, I always had to take my jewelry. I didn't want my stuff around me. I wanted to just get rid of all that. And so I started not wearing any kind of, in the morning, not wearing any mascara or makeup to work, and no perfume and all that. And then when Tracy started earning a bit more money, my character had gone to London. I remember buying some fancy perfume and only wearing it for Tracy. And that's when it started. And I've done it ever since. and it helps.
Brilliant. I'm tempted to get you to list all the perfumes that you've worn, all the smells that you've worn, but we'll come back to that. We've got time. Let's sort of rewind a bit, sort of in a way, like kind of back to the beginning after the workshop. But your career trajectory was kind of fast track rise, really. You did your smallish scale British TV. You did a couple of UK indies. Then you crossed over to the States. Did a picture, got an Academy nomination, you know, from sort of doing Under the Skin through to Woody Allen in just a few years. That seems like a really fast move. Did you realize the enormity of that at the time? I mean, did this seem like a sort of logical progression, or did it take you by surprise?
Not really, because I think the thing that was really, for me, that was kind of scary was doing my first play. So I left London at 16 and left Nottingham at 16 to come and do this play at the Royal Court, and I had nowhere to live, nowhere to stay. And I was sleeping at that point. I'd slept at the St Pancras train station, and a friend had given me the name of someone that she knew back in the day who lived in London, who worked at Abbey Road, and this woman called Dee, an amazing woman. And she lived in the Peabody buildings I called it Convent Garden. I didn't know it was Covent Garden. I was like, going to Convent Garden. And I'd like phoned this woman, I couldn't get hold of her. And I was like, oh, I don't know, I got to just turn up. So I remember sleeping, you know, it was really rough, obviously, back then. I wasn't homeless, but I just had nowhere to go that night. So I slept at the station. And then I remember going, and I'd fibbed, I'd said I'd got somewhere to stay so I could, you know, eventually get in. I got this part in a play called Ashes and Sand that Ian Rickson directed with Susan Lynch and Melissa Wilson and Ray Keola, and there was Nick Redding. It was just, anyway, amazing cast. And I was just like, a proper play. I was like absolutely, you know, petrified. And so everything else after that was a doddle, like just, you go in, you audition. I mean, you've got to remember as well, for every part you get, remember I've got all my little diaries of like going on the tubes and all this in London or going to New York or whatever, is like, there'll be loads I didn't get. There's a lot of disappointment. I remember being like, you know, there's a group of us that I really, really adore. And back then we're all up for the same parts a lot. There's a really amazing women like Anna Friel and Kelly MacDonald and really, really good women who are brilliant. And so we'd all be up for the same parts. It'd be like, oh, she got that one, I got this one, she got that one, I got this one, she got that, you know. And it was this, I mean, looking back, it was a really beautiful time. And so it wasn't just that you get everything you go for and everything's super successful. You're just lucky to be working, really lucky. And you don't think at the time that it is success. You're just working. And I'm really happy to be working. I'm happy to be, I love traveling, you see. So if a part's in Israel, I'll go. If back in the day, if a part's in, I don't know, Bali, I'll go anywhere. I was like, yeah, just get my backpack and go. I really, yes, so I didn't think it, sorry if that sounds a bit weird,
no,
but I think I'd had my first fear factor and everything else was a laugh after that.
Just go back to that fear factor. You're not known for doing theatre.
No,
I mean, we know you did it right at the beginning, but you don't do it now.
No.
What's that about?
I did a couple of plays, and I used to do like rehearsed readings, and again, like I remember doing one for, I think it was Patrick Marber, and then I didn't get the part, and I was really gutted. I think Anna Friel got that part. She was amazing. It's in Closer. She was extraordinary, and it was like it wasn't I didn't want to. I just got other parts, and then I had a child quite young, and then if I was going to be a single mum working, I had to pay for childcare. And I got a mortgage really young, and I was like, oh, and I had no support or backup with, like, I suppose, a bank of mum and dad. So I kind of had to stay where I was going to get a bit of money. Really,
would you think about going back to it?
Absolutely. And even more so when lockdown happened, I suddenly got this big, because I've moved back to the UK and like properly back to the UK. And I don't know, there was this, because it didn't go away. When you love something like that, it never goes from you. It's there. I've still got my script with Ian Rickson, and he taught me a huge amount that I just kept on with. And I think stuff from Max Stafford Clark. I didn't ever work with him, but just stuff that I use. Every script I get, I use the things that Ian taught me back then, Ian Smith and Ian Rickson. And then obviously filmmakers teach you things, different people that you work with, and you're just always getting more, if you like, tools for your tool bag as an actor. So I hope, you know, if I can afford to, but I mean, now it's like, it's the, you know, we just pray, and I hope and pray that we have a theatre to go back to. You know, more than ever. I mean, it just seemed like I just suddenly had this heartbreaking moment in a way that maybe older actors might have, thinking, will I ever do a play again? Me going, gosh, will I ever do that again? Yeah, I hope so.
Okay, don't bring it down right now.
No.
It's all going to be fine.
Sorry.
It's interesting looking at your filmography. You more than any other actor I can think of, you seem to really be able to balance that kind of big scale, you know, the big scale Hollywood, you know, Academy Award nomination, etc., with very small, very, very independent pieces. So, for example, you did, I think, Minority Report, you know, Spielberg, Tom Cruise, in the same period, year or 2 years that you did Morvern Callar. Were you ever counselled against that kind of, you know, veering back and forth? I mean, are the people around?
No. But what did happen was very, very early on, living in New York, a lot, you know, there's back in the day, there's a lot of interest in you, and you get a lot of offers, and you get a lot of incredibly lucrative offers, but nothing comes for free in this world, you know. Some of these meetings back then were about, I mean, I would be given a part that was a huge part opposite a huge Hollywood actor of the leading lady, and I'd be all excited and I think, yeah, I'm going to do this one, this is going to be great. And there would be a suggestion of me wearing a skirt to the dinner with the studio execs that evening, and I wasn't told to wear a skirt, but it was a gentle, subtle suggestion, because I back then, you know, we're talking late 90s, 97, 98, I'd be wearing jeans and a little jacket, and I was very, you know, no makeup, and I was just like, I would literally just tell people to fuck off, because I'd rather go back to Nottingham and maybe do, you know, devise a play or go and write poetry and live in Bali for a bit. Fuck it. I didn't want that. I knew very early on that wasn't okay. And that they were compromises that were weird. It was just weird. It wasn't like, if the character needed to wear a skirt, yeah, let's put a skirt on, if that's right. But for Sammy, going to dinner to kind of seal the deal or have a chat about, you know, all those things with the leading man, I was like, nah, it's not cool. So I had a few incidents like that. And I also had a few incidents where friends of mine who were very successful, but I'd made friends in Hollywood, and they were really successful. They are really successful. And I looked at elements of their life and I thought, I don't know if I could do that. I really don't know if I could compromise so many aspects of being me. And that's what I thought there was a payoff, not pay, you know, something just didn't feel right. And then I had my daughter Esme really young. And then that was more, there was more of an impetus for me to be true to myself, if that made sense. So, you know, if scripts came through, regardless of their budget, if I didn't understand the script, I'm not going to do it, regardless of who the director is. If I can't read the script and get a sense of it, and then, gosh, even if they're not offers, when I say I'm not going to do it, these things might not be offers to me, or even auditions. They're being sent to me, and I'm like, I don't want to pursue this particular role because I don't understand A, why they're making it, B, the role, what this is all about. You know, and then these films go on to make millions at the box office, and my agents was like, you could have played that role, and I'm like, well, you know, it wasn't meant to be. But the reason why I think, I mean, even now, I said to my agent the other day, I said, I'm desperate to do another another film where there is an independent film, because they're few and far between, and I get the privilege and the honor of working with a director that's making their vision, being supported by a producer that's supporting their vision. And that type of cinema, I think, is getting rarer and rarer. And you have brilliant Hollywood actresses and actors that are moving into that. They often did a bit of both, but now they're just totally doing those films. So they're just few and far between, getting financed, and B, you know, being available to me. And it's my dream. And I had a conversation with an actress on a TV series not that long ago. We were having a really tough day, and it was one of those like, turn up, get on your mark, we've got 5 pages to shoot today. And I was like, no rehearsal, and she said, well, that's why I do theatre, because I get my weeks of rehearsal, and then every night we can just play. And I was like, but I love what I do, and I love being on set. I love the magic of watching how the camera works, of understanding how to perform for the camera, of that, like, oh, the magic. It's just movie magic. I love it.
To go back to Morvern Callar, tell us about the relationship. I remember seeing you at that time, actually in a rehearsed reading for Morvern Callar with Lynn and Liana, the late Liana Lignini, and you read a section from the book. And you and Liana and Lynn seemed a really tight unit. It just seemed to be your kind of happy place, and you were all kind of anarchic and anti-establishment and sort of doing things your way. Presumably that was the spirit when you took on that project. Tell us about making that, if you can remember the experience of making that. I can remember
that. It's something I remember for the rest of my life. It was beautiful. In a similar way to making Under the Skin with Karen Adler, and I had a thing that it was just so excited to be being in a room with a woman to see what she was. And I loved Ratcatcher and Gasman. I loved her shorts and Gasman, and I just and also she's from Glasgow. My stepdad was from Glasgow. There was just something. It was like there was something about how she communicated. She spoke to me like I was clever. Nobody at all had spoken to me like I was clever in regards to directors. They weren't rude to me. No one was ever rude to me, but they were just busy doing their thing. And then I was busy doing the acting. But Lynn spoke to me like a collaborator. And I was really young, but she spoke to me like I had a brain. And I liked that. And she would explain to me composition. And she said, I want you to see this film and this film. And so she educated me as well. So rather than keeping her talent to herself, it was like, I want you to be good for me. And it was this empowering. A woman empowering another woman, young woman, to be good. And that was just in liberating, because it was like she didn't just have a secret. It was like, I'm going to share it with you. And so she'd do things like, come and look at this, and come and look at the monitor, and she'd go and be Morvern and go, look at this, isn't this beautiful? And then she'd get so excited about light, and I was like just salivating at this human being taking such joy in their craft that it was just intoxicating. And so it wasn't that we were anti-establishment at all. We were just doing our thing. And then in the same way, Lynn hadn't worked with she'd worked with non-actors. And even though I'd done a lot of acting since I was 12, I wasn't from a traditionally trained acting background as well. So I just thought it was a bit perfect. And it was I'll treasure it, those memories, because they're few and far between.
And can you talk a little bit about that character, because she's a really interesting character, because she's in a way she should be very hard for an audience to kind of grasp hold of her. She makes choices that we might not make, and you had to bring an audience with you. Was she hard to play?
No. I don't think anyone's hard to play. You just play them. You literally get on with it, like washing the pots, or you've got something to do, you just do it. Days are hard when you're tired. Days are hard when, you might have lost the light, or days are hard when, you lose a location. But playing a character for me I don't really think of them as characters when I'm in it. It's in hindsight, you go, oh, that was that person, and that was that person, and that was that. But I don't psychoanalyze them. I just be. It's really hard to describe.
Are you confident in your performance, like at the time or afterwards? I mean, do you watch back what you've done?
No, not for years. I didn't watch anything, and I can't watch myself at work, which was really hard when Lynn was like, this, come and look at this, or playback and stuff like that. I don't do that, because for one, I don't like the sound of my own voice, or I don't like my big forehead, or I've got problems with my teeth. But I actually like myself more now I'm older, because I'm getting to look more like my mum. It's weird as you get older, isn't it? And I look and I go, oh, I look like Pam. That's not bad. I love my mum. Oh, hello, Pam. Looking at my face. But being other people is really weird. So no, I don't really. And then my husband said to me, have you ever seen any of these things? I said, well, sometimes you have to see stuff because you know, obviously you're in ADR and you have to do your voice stuff, and sometimes you have to sit through a screening at a festival, and it's hell. It's just hell. But what I wanted to do with certain filmmakers is watch their work after we'd done it. So I'd give it a space and time, and then I'd watch Michael Winterbottom's film, or Lynn Ramsey's film, or Charlie Kaufman's film, or Spielberg's film, and I'd watch their film. Not my performance, but their film. And I was like, oh, that was a good one. I was in that good film.
We can tell you they were all good. It's all fine.
Oh, thank you.
So, talking about Charlie Kaufman and Lynn and, you know, Harmony Korine and David Cronenberg, there's a sort of through line in some of those directors. I suppose you might call them like kind of extreme auteurs. You know, there's a very specific thing you get with those directors. Do you think to what extent did those projects just come to you accidentally? It's another good script, it's another good project, or were you seeking out working with particular kind of identity in your directors?
I'm just really lucky if I get to work with directors like that. I remember writing to a director just once, and I heard nothing back. And that was David Lynch. And my agent, my amazing agent, who I've had two agents for many, many years. And she said, hey, you should, just why don't you try it? And I did, and I heard nothing, and I was so embarrassed, I was mortified. And I was like, thank goodness I didn't write to Jim Jarmusch or all these people, because, hopefully one day they might think, oh, I've got a part for this person, is she busy? And I'll be like, oh. But I think it's down, it's casting directors doing good jobs, I think, if they're allowed to. They're allowed to kind of, because you've got so many things about box office and, who's a name and who's not. And sometimes people that aren't right for roles play roles that they're not right for. And that might be said of me, I don't know. But I think that I don't seek that out, Briony. I just want to work, and I want to work with people that got good stuff, and hopefully we have a chat and we get on. And my agents are really good. They know what I like, and they know that I'm looking to work with, filmmakers all over the world, male, female, low budget, big budget. I'll bring it on. I've just done American television, which was amazing, which I was petrified of. And that was life-changing. And I'm really glad I did that, because everyone said it was the hard, it's just so hard. And, if you can do that, and I was like, well, if I can do this, I can do anything. And it's another string to my bow. So, yeah.
When you, thinking back on working with those particular directors, when you then came to be a director yourself with your debut, The Unloved, did you, were you conscious of bringing particular things from particular directors to yourself on set? I mean, what kind of a director were you?
I think it's interesting you asked that, because I've had loads of different incredible experiences on set, but one of my favorite things about being on set sometimes is when directors like it very quiet and they don't want too many people about, almost like a closed set. And when everything, what's like they do a nookie scene. I like it when there's no one about, and I like rehearsal. I like to sit in the space with the director and the writer potentially and the cinematographer and go, what are we doing here, what's going on, and have time with the other actor before and just talk through the scene, and if we're lucky enough to have that time, because set time is money and all that, and that's my joy. So when I approached it as a director, I just said to the crew, listen, I want everybody to be able to do their job. I don't want anyone to feel that they're in the way and that they're not allowed to do their job. However, this is going to be really intimate and really, really just very small and quiet. Not always quiet, because I play music as well a lot in between takes, and I did that to just so the kids were relaxed and stuff like that, and it was fun for them. And all I could do was bring my sensibility as an actor, because I'd not directed before. And the other stuff, when you're in the moment, you can't think, oh, what would Steven Spielberg do? Well, Steven Spielberg's got the money for a 60-foot Technocrane. I've not got the money for a 60-foot Technocrane. So I've got to try and improvise and think, how am I going to get that shot? And, you know, to me, the prep was the most important, making sure I had enough prep for all of the crew and myself, and spending the time and the money there, and learning after all these years that what makes a production go smoothly, and sometimes what makes things, you know, sadly makes a production have a hiccup, and trying to my best to as much as you can learn from that, and a lot of rehearsal for the actors if they had the time to give me that.
Do you, when you're an actor, do you like rehearsal?
Yes, yeah, a lot. Not it doesn't always have to be the scene to be rehearsed, but I like the idea of a huge amount of discussion prior to setting foot on that set.
And again, you found an incredible young girl to work with, Molly Windsor, who's just so like a young
Shaheen found her, really. We've got to put that one out there. Thank you.
Fair dues, but you got the best out of her. Can you talk a little bit, because that's a really difficult role that she had to play. You talked about the total silence at the beginning of that, of the film. Can you talk a little bit about kind of how you as a director, thinking back to you as an actor, had a kind of duty of care to your young performer? I mean, were there things that you know, what kind of conversations did you have with her?
Well, she's a child. It was conversations with Beth, her mum. So Molly was really young then, and there was one scene she did with Robert Carlyle where it was a kind of a very wide shot, and he comes in, he's interrogating her, and he throws her on the sofa, and she was in bits. Said, we got it, we don't need to go again. And in my version of the storyboard, I had various shots and I had angles, and this was what I wanted to do. But there in that moment, I was like, we got it, we don't need to go again. And that's trusting that, and trusting, because I don't like watching a monitor. So, because it messes with my head. So I'm always watching the set, I'm always watching the actors, and as opposed to sitting in a room watching a monitor of what the camera's doing. And I just like to look in the camera, and I like to trust the operator, and feel that. And I think in regards to Molly and the other children, it was, and Lauren Socker as well, I have to say that she was extraordinary and is extraordinary. Listening, like, did you like that? Do you want to go again? What could you, anything that felt eggy, or, you know, how did you know? And then you can feel truth. You know what I mean? You can feel when you're in that room, you can feel when it's, you know. And then you've got, I was lucky enough that we're filming in Nottingham, so the Broadway cinema, because I shot on film, we're able to watch our rushes on film. It's extraordinary. And I was able to look at all the rushes and go, because when you're shooting on film as well, it's very expensive, so you're not going to shoot too much, you know. So I was lucky enough to watch and go, right, okay, and learn a little bit as I went along, going, oh, I did too much there, that was too much. And next time I'm doing a scene similar to that, I know really what's important.
It's interesting because you also you had a lovely co-writing relationship with Tony Grisoni for that one.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
One of the things that struck me about the character of Molly as you'd written her was that she was quite, her dialogue is very minimal. She doesn't say that much. And I was struck because actually you've often performed in roles where you don't say much. I mean, famously, you got an Oscar nomination for one of them where you literally are a mute person. And at the beginning of Morvern Callar, there's no dialogue, there's nothing. It's just, you don't say anything. So it's interesting that it's almost like you trust.
Yeah, I just want to interrupt you there, because I think the idea of mute is fascinating. And say you're talking about words, but film used to be silent. And so you can say a huge amount with your body language, with your eyes, music, the soundscape that a director might choose to use. So actually Hattie in Sweet and Lowdown was a right chatterbox. She was just mute. She was so animated. She wasn't a still person at all. She wasn't quiet. She was pretty out there.
she was like a silent movie star who acted with her eyes and her
she did have, there was a scene where she was playing a silent movie star, but Hattie as a person, and I think we have this you know, I find it fascinating thinking about the senses, and I find it fascinating thinking about, you know, the fact that I, you know, don't say very much. There's a lot going on. It's whether the camera is capturing the thoughts and the, you know, and the music and the atmosphere, I suppose, all coming across. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Mad, but I'm saying that not all these people are quiet. And Molly's character, Lucy, in the Unloved, is obviously experiencing a huge amount. She's just not vocalizing it with words. So there's she's saying a huge amount, but not, I am in pain. Oh, fuck off, you bastard, or whatever it is. She is literally, there's so much going on that you can't write words for those scenes. And sometimes that's the joy in that is what isn't said is just as important as what is said. And having a shot of an actor listening to another person is sometimes just as important as the shot of the actor talking.
I want to talk about telly quickly before we get to some audience questions.
Okay.
I mean, let's just cut straight to The Walking Dead because I can't resist not doing that. Tell us about you play another mother, slightly different one this time. How seriously did you take on this character? I mean, how in one sense she's a kind of cartoon of horror, you know, ripping people's skin off and rubbing blood in her hands and, you know, behaving like such a horror character. Like how much
she's not big though.
She's not what?
She's not a big, she didn't have grand gestures. She was putting the blood on her hands so that the zombies can't smell her.
Yeah, absolutely. But how much did you, when you got offered that part, you know, how much did you think of her as a character as opposed to just another kind of, you know, horror action, you know, silliness? Like how, because you brought
No,
such
I don't
depth
think
to
it's
her.
silly at all. I think The Walking Dead is an incredibly serious piece of, I mean, it's all shot on film. And if you go back to the season, I started in season 9, and season 1 started off, and people that may have started with the show and then didn't continue because it just goes on and on and on, they should, I'm not just saying they should, you know, pick it up again. It's I read first of all read the script and thought, gosh, this is like a movie. And I, you know, growing up in the 80s, and I loved kind of George Romero films, and I love films like The Omen or The Entity, or, you know, The Exorcist, and you know, all of the zombie films at that time, and even like Assault on Precinct, whatever I can't remember the name of that one, but you know, there's a time, and that is what the Walking Dead is like, classic American cinema, and it's shot incredibly beautifully, and they spend, I hate to say this, they do spend a lot of money, and everything is, not everything's CGI. So these, you have Greg, who is a director and special effects, but I mean the makeup is extraordinary. We're talking kind of the most extraordinary makeup, and as an artist, that is brilliant. It isn't comic book like, oh, how can I describe it? It doesn't feel camp when you're there, and everything is, and I think Alpha is one of the greatest roles I've ever played, and I'm incredibly proud of not only the writers that wrote her, because you obviously have a lot of different writers writing the character. You have Angela, who's a female showrunner. You have a lot of female directors on the show and a lot of female writers. And I was so proud that the main central, if you like, villain for such a show was a woman. Because whenever growing up I'd watch the Bond films, I wouldn't want to be a Bond girl. I always wanted to be the villain. And I was like, oh. And then obviously as an actor, you hope one day a script's going to come in where you get to play that villain, and it just isn't there. So when this came through, I mean, I've been offered American television before, but you look at the expectations of you as a human being is to relocate with your family for 7 years, and you're not guaranteed the episodes, and there's a lot of things that if any actors are watching this out there, you'll know about, or you'll go, it's a risk in a way, an amazing risk, but you know, I've always kind of been scared of getting it wrong, and this was like just a role of a lifetime. And I'm like, hold on a minute, you know, I was just so proud, and I do take it very seriously, and I think that she's actually a very still character, Alpha. If you've ever seen any of it, or if you're ever interested, it is a different genre for a lot of people. They might not be interested in it, but you'd be really, really surprised. I'm incredibly proud of it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that completely. Did you have anxiety about going into something? I mean, the show's been going for, 150 episodes or something. Did you have anxiety? And some of the original characters are still in it, or one or two of the original characters are still in it. How did it feel to kind of go in? Presumably it's like a family of some description. Did you feel anxious about going into that world, going into those?
No, I felt anxious that how long they take to shoot an episode.
How long do they
really
take?
Thought about that. I think it's like 9 days, between 5 and 9 days. And that's film, and that's a lot of coverage, a lot of actors, a lot of stuff. But they're like an incredibly well-oiled machine. And you know, so long as you know your stuff and you're ready to rock and roll, it's like, the missing piece makes the big O, the Shel Silverstein. I arrived there and I just felt amazing. I felt supported, and I miss them all terribly, actually. I'll get emotional thinking about it, because they do become a family, and maybe that's what it's like being on a soap. I don't know, I've never been in a soap. But
did you know at the point when you took this on how long the arc was supposed to be, or is that something okay.
They told me she's not gonna live very long. Okay. And in a way that was like a liberating thing, that you're not kind of, because what if I'd have hated it? I mean, I didn't. I loved it, but what if I didn't enjoy it? I mean, I'm saying to my family, like, sorry guys, we're here for a few more years, we're playing Alpha, and I loved it. So actually I was sad when she had her head chopped off, but then I was a ghost in a couple of episodes, so you never know. It was all a bit like,
she came back from the dead.
And also I was doing Harlots at the same time, so I was back and forth playing Margaret Wells in Harlots, which was extraordinary. So it was like, I feel so blessed, because what great characters to be getting your teeth into. It's like, wow.
Was that an acute exercise in the demonstration between the UK industry and the US TV industry?
Well, no, at that point, Harlots, obviously it's made by Monumental, which is a lovely group of women, and so we've got Alison Carpenter, who's on the producer on the ground, who's amazing, and then you've got Maura Buffini, Alison Newman, and then you've got other writers there, and then female directors, and a brilliant cast, Leslie Manville, and Liv Tyler. It's an amazing cast, and then I was like the cat that got the cream, I have to say, because then I'm off. And that's Hulu. Sorry, Briony, that was my point, that Hulu were funding that. So it was an American show, and it was huge in America. I'd be like going down the street in Georgia, and my husband would make me laugh, and I've got a bit of a cackle. And it was like, somebody goes, "Is that Margaret Wells?" And I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, how do you know?" And it's like, they are fans of the show. Whereas in the UK, people hadn't seen it, sadly, until the BBC bought it and put it on. And it's like, I think season 3's on now, and it's like, so I was very lucky doing them both.
We've got some good questions coming in. Can we get to those? Okay. So Amy Forrest wants to know, it's probably quite a broad question, she says, but how do you prepare for an audition? What's your process?
I used to, I'm rubbish at auditions, if I'm honest, and I tend not to do that. But when I was younger and I was auditioning, I'd just I think it's harder for people now with having to put themselves on tape all the time, and then you don't hear back, and you don't know, you're not getting any feedback as from somebody directing you saying, can you be more this, more that? And I come from a time where, luckily for me, a casting director or a director would be directing me in the auditions. And I was always, I suppose for me, auditioning, it was always about being completely off the page, never not knowing my lines. And unless obviously I'd literally just been given them for whatever reason, because sometimes people were quite secretive about the pages, and just being as comfortable in my own skin and my own ability to have a take on it, because ultimately sometimes I think that's what directors want. They want you to have a sense of what you're going to do, rather than just going, what do you want? It's like, no, what are you going to bring to this?
Adam Frith wants to know, he says he's a recent drama school graduate and is interested in how conscious you are, if at all, about the technical aspects of acting on camera when the director calls action.
Okay, so it used to be that I would try and shut all that off. And actually, sometimes I have my fingers in my ears when they're doing the clapper board because I hear it ringing for a very long time afterwards. And so I ask for a quiet clap. I'm always, the more you do, the more aware you are of if something's gone wrong and you need to redo it, or the director, what the director needs, or, you know, performing. And then in the corner of your eye, somebody will be saying, you'll know that something's gone wrong. You're like, oh, do we need to cut? You know, I suppose it's just time and experience, but I don't know at drama school if they do enough on film acting, because it is entirely different, I believe, and television acting to kind of what people do on stage in a way, but that's my opinion.
Question from Nick Shoderge, who is editor. How do you feel about the editing process in the sense that it affects your performance on screen? Do you ever think about it when you act?
Yes, I do now. I didn't used to, and I certainly don't on film. I think with television, you know that a lot of the time there's a formulaic approach to how things need to be edited to get a story across, and how that's going to work, and whether it's going to cut together or not. So I'm always aware of it, but not so much that it bothers me. I'll be watching how a director might set up a shot and be going, is this going to cut together? Are we sure? And then the director might be asking the script supervisor, and I'm like, okay, right, yeah. And I think when you've been doing it as long as I have, those things are just kind of second nature. But on a film, you hope that the editor, gosh, they can manipulate your performance to something absolutely extraordinary, or they can not understand what you were trying to do, and you're like, oh, that silence was there for a reason, and you've just got it out. And but you have to let go of that when you've done your performance. Then it belongs to the post-production process of the director and the editor, and then it belongs to the audience.
Somebody who hasn't put their name says, how does working on a long-form TV series like Harlots or The Walking Dead differ from working on a film? Is having to build a character over a longer period of screen time more difficult?
No, it is the same thing, and I really mean this. So long as you know your character, as in you've got the essence of that person, whatever they write for you, whatever you can be that, unless somebody's written something that you so fundamentally think is bizarre, and then you might be in a position, if you're lucky enough, to have a really respectful conversation with the creatives and say, are we sure about this? Is this because in long form television, the people making the show have a lot of storylines and threads that they need to balance, and they will also have a lot of things that aren't related to your character, so they need the right things to go on. And so sometimes it's not personal, but they might need something to happen in order to balance something out here and there. And you just have to, so long as you've got your character, you just go with the flow. In film, you're in the fortunate position to have your script hopefully well in advance, and if you're shooting out of sequence, you'll have prepared your script enough to be okay with that you know where you're going to be at any point, because they might drop you in at this scene and that's going after that. And so it is different in regards to the practicalities and the logistical process of filmmaking, but fundamentally in here it is exactly the same.
Emily Bennett wants to know, what's the most helpful piece of advice or note a director has ever given you?
A director? Oh my God, I was going to say another actor.
You can give us the other actor one as well.
Oh, Chrissy Rock, don't let the bastards grind you down. Because sometimes a director will be telling you to do something and you're like, I'm doing it. I'm actually doing it. They're just looking at a monitor that big and they can't see what I'm doing. And I'd be thinking, you wait till you get home and you're looking at it like that. I'm giving you pain, I'm giving you sadness. And you just live and learn through that. But the best advice, I don't think anyone really gave me advice. It was just Chrissy Rock gave me that advice.
We should all live by that advice. Michael Cannon wants to know, when working with a director you haven't worked with before, what does the process of building trust look like between you and them? And how does that change once you work with them again?
Well, in television, you're working with a lot of people that come in and direct an episode, and I think in those scenarios, my job is to play either Margaret Wells or Alpha, just talking about 2 recent performances, to the best of my ability, and in those scenarios, sometimes the directors really are directing camera, and they're directing a scene and the story. And I think directing episodic television is slightly different to, let's say, what Lynn Ramsey might do, where she's directing her movie, her film, her actor, and you just have to be supportive. For someone like me at my age now, I just want to be there to be helpful and supportive, because it's really hard coming in on a TV show and going, right, all these people know each other, been working together for ages, I've got this idea, this is what I want to do, and you just try and be as supportive as you can, really. And in those scenarios, I just have to trust that I know my character enough to just get on with it, for want of a better word. But if I'm lucky enough to be on the set of, let's say, Tom Beard, when I did Two for Joy, who was his first feature film, that trust has to be there when we first meet, because and that will decide if I'm going to do that job. And when we meet and I feel safe that he has got the right instincts and he comes from a good place, then you have to trust. And you just have to give it 150%, even if that person's never directed a movie, because that's what's going to, that togetherness is what that process is about.
Martin Vaughan wants to says, Sam, you've done Nottingham proud. Question is, you've been a part of some groundbreaking TV over the years, both as an actor and as a director. What was the TV that inspired you growing up?
Okay, so growing up, I watched a lot of like Neighbours and Home and Away when I got in from school. But if we're talking about things that made me go, it was Ken Loach. It was seeing Abigail's Party on the, I think it was Play for Today, or, but when words like inspire, we knock them around now. We live in a woke society and all that. Back in 86, 87, no one's asking, you're not being inspired, you just know what you like and what you don't like. And I was never one for enjoying, when I was younger, musical theatre. I really liked Annie, the film, the John Huston film, but then I'd watch another musical and not like them. I didn't know why, but I was always funny about if things were fake. I knew from a very young age, I didn't like phony. Not that phony's bad. I didn't like that world. I liked the Alan Clark world. I liked the Ken Loach world. It seemed to make sense to me because it was truth.
Oliver Scott Glebo wants to know how you work on your accents, especially Alpha's American accent. You've got a lovely Southern accent.
Accent work I find really hard. And I have to do a lot of work on it, and I have to put the prep in, I have to put the time in, and I work with different accent coaches if I'm lucky, and that might be just to do a session before a movie where I go, I'm playing this part, can you work with me for a bit? And I will just get voice exercises, and they will help me out with taping it. I'm not very good at understanding what they talk about with diphthongs and how you do things with vowels and all that. I'm like, I have to listen. I have got what they say. Luckily, I've got an ear, but that doesn't mean it's easy. I just have to. I need to know it, where I don't just know the lines. I know the character. I know the voice, because you've got to know who the person is before you can do the voice, because the person is about breath, how that person breathes, and sighs or walks and moves. It's all connected to then it goes back to the voice. So it's not just about, hey, I'm doing a Geordie accent, how do I man, or whatever stupid thing like that. It's bigger than that, and it takes a huge amount of commitment and dedication, and just hard work. Can you hear me? I think we cut off there.
Kylie Conklin wants to know. Yeah, we got you.
Okay.
Kylie Conklin wants to know how you get over stage fright.
Okay, one last point on the voice thing as well. I think I worked with a woman called Lilene Mansell when I was young. It's my first American accent. And up until then, I'd always just gone to a place with a little dictaphone and recorded how they sounded, whether it was Bradford in Band of Gold, or I went to County Antrim for my first film, This Is the Sea, with Richard Harris, and Mary McGuckin directed that. And just I would just listen and copy. And I was so scared to work with a voice coach in case something changed in me that I wasn't real. But actually, getting the right voice coach and doing all that work is, I can't recommend it highly enough. It's brilliant. Sorry. Stage fright.
No. Stage fright. So how do you get over stage fright, nervousness before filming? I mean, do you have stage fright?
Once. I had it really badly once, and it was horrific. And that was actually anxiety, and that's a panic attack. And I do suffer with panic attacks and anxiety. And I think that's kind of my stuff. That's my own stuff that I can bring to my work environment. I ask myself questions. Am I sleeping enough? Am I healthy? You know, what stresses and what have I got in my own life that I just need to deal with? Because having to turn something on quite quickly all the time and being, you know, that's hard. And I was doing the Cronenberg film, and I was in this limousine, and I had this monologue. I think it was like a 20-page monologue my character had, and it was bizarre. And it was, you know, and the crew were having to shake the car because there was a riot going on outside, and I literally just kept forgetting my lines. But that was also the first time I'd worked for a digital camera. And what happened was the camera kept jarring before I forgot my lines. And so it was just suddenly I was watching little pieces of my world kind of fall apart, where the camera went, and then they're shaking the car, and then I'm, you know, and I'm, it was just an awful experience. And I took some herbal things, it was called Passiflora, and these little drops, and I started to meditate, and I kind of found it again. Mm-hmm. But that was the one and only time, touch wood. But I think it was me. I think it was where I was at in my life then. And I deal with PTSD to do with my childhood. So that was interesting, because that had never happened. Acting had always been my safe space. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, I was like, oh, that was weird. Yeah. And I think it was because I didn't trust the camera. It was a new energy, because the film camera makes a noise. And even though that's annoying to people, and they're putting coats on it sometimes and bashing it, I love the camera. I'm like, it's my friend. And then all of a sudden there was this little thing, and they were doing take after take after take after take because they could. And I was like, this is just weird.
So learning a whole new way of working.
Yeah.
Here's a challenging one. James Hughes says, the versatility of your credits is so impressive, and you're only halfway through your career. What are your aspirations for the industry as we move forward into new times, and the roles you hope to play next? It's a bit broad, but give it a go.
No, I think it's a good question. I hope that I can direct more, that people will be kind enough to fund some of the things I have to say. I hope that I get to play, just for want of a better word, juicy roles, really interesting roles. And I hope that they're written by women as well as men. And I hope that we see more women. I want a 50-50, everyone out there, whoever's watching. I just want it to be 50-50, if possible. The right people at the right times, but, you know, that would be great. And I think in these times, certainly the times of COVID and moving forward, I just want everybody to be safe. As safe as we possibly can be, but we need to survive. We need more funding from the government. They need to, you know, it's outrageous what they're doing and not understanding, you know, how much, you know, what they're all doing. They're sitting at home watching their Netflix and their BBC iPlayer, aren't they, in the evening? You know, whether it's Bake Off or another series of something, they're watching. They're watching us. They're watching people. They're watching. Cameramen have done their work. Editors have done their work. Actors have done their work. Directors are directing. You know, people have done post. It's like, come on. So I just pray and hope that we get to keep doing this. You've cut again. You went all still. Are you still there?
Really conscious. We've completely run out of time. I'm still here. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. We are in fact out of time. But I just want to know one thing. You sound so, in a way, so joyful about your craft. I think you love being an actor.
Oh my gosh, it's a dream come true. Yeah, I mean, for me,
but your daughter is an actor. When she first when she first started acting, I know she was acting in a film with you, but when she first sort of headed into your world, did you have any reservation? Or is it such a joy experience that you're very happy for her to have that experience too?
It's a really long answer to that, and you said we'd run out of time, so that's a whole separate thing. But I will say to you that acting has saved me. I feel fortunate, privileged that I was able to do it coming from a working class background. And we need drama teachers in schools. We need that to be respected and understood. We need more funding in that way. And we need more diversity, I mean, across the board in regards to this amazing industry that we're all lucky enough to be part of. But I do have joy, and I count my blessings, and I still love it. I still get butterflies, even talking to you now, the BAFTA audience. I feel privileged to be, even the word BAFTA on my bloody thing there. I feel unbelievably privileged. And we need to take care of it and take care of each other, you know?
That's perfect. A perfect way to end. Samantha Morton, it has been so wonderful to hear you talk about what you do.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your BAFTA nomination most recently, and we look forward to many, many more. Thank you to everybody who joined us tonight. Thank you to all your questions. I'm so sorry that we didn't get to them all. And thank you again to Sea Containers for supporting this event. But it's been a real pleasure, and see you again on screen soon. Thank you so much.
Briony.
Good night, everybody.
Take care. Bye. God bless. Bye.